Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alison Lagrange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alison Lagrange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. The Russian army says its forces have captured a large village in Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region, making it the latest territorial gain as Moscow's troops advance deeper into Ukraine. U.S. President Donald Trump calls the rise of Chinese company DeepSeek a wake-up call for the American tech industry. This after the emergence of the Chinese AI model triggered a sharp fall in shares of major tech firms, including Nvidia, Microsoft, and Alphabet and Meta. Nigeria announces its army has killed 70 Boko Haram terrorists in a series of military operations in northeastern Borno state, which remains a hotbed for Islamist insurgency in the country. A boat full of tourists capsizes on a river in southern Chile just short of its final destination, killing at least 6 of the total 34 passengers. And the draw for this year's Africa Cup of Nations takes place in Morocco's capital, Rabat, the host city for the final. The 24 participating teams have been placed into 6 groups of 4. The first match will be played on the 21st of December this year. Hello and welcome. We start with the volatile situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where M23 rebels, backed by neighbouring Rwanda, have captured the city of Goma in the mineral-rich east. Explosions and intense gunfire was heard in the city throughout the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, protesters have attacked several foreign embassies in DRC's capital of Kinshasa to show anger against the M23 rebels and Rwanda. They attacked the embassies of the US, France, Belgium and Rwanda. The protesters were heard chanting, "Death to imperialists," in the attack on the US embassy. Meanwhile, clashes between the rebels and the DRC army killed at least 17 people and injured over 300 over the past day. Kigali says that 5 civilians have also died in Rwanda.
Pour qu'il vienne baiser, il est venu jusque dans l'aéroport international de Goma. C'est en direct, hein? Vous voyez comment nous sommes en train d'allumer le feu là-bas? Au Rwanda, ça brûle. Ça brûle, ça brûle, ça brûle. Donc nous sommes déterminés aujourd'hui pour sauver notre pays.
The escalation has worsened the displacement crisis. Many are fleeing the city, which was a refuge for those already displaced. Among those fleeing are also Congolese soldiers. Several DRC soldiers have surrendered and fled into neighbouring Rwanda. Now, Rwanda has shared videos showing the surrendered Congolese troops. The Rwandan army says they have disarmed more than 120 Congolese soldiers who have entered the country. However, the DRC accuses the Rwandan army of being present in Goma. The United Nations has ordered the withdrawal of any external forces, while Rwanda says it needs to maintain a defensive posture. Incidents of looting have surfaced amid panic and chaos in the DRC. Videos show people looting the Palace of Justice in Goma after Rwandan-backed rebels marched into the city. Then there has been a mass prison break as well in the city, with reports of deaths. On the other hand, many civilians have also hit the streets of the eastern region to show support for the DRC army. Thousands protested against Rwanda and the rebels.
When we protest here, we boost the morale of our army. We boost the morale of our fighters on the front line. And we weaken the enemy who is trying to illegally occupy our territory and exploit our minerals, which the people do not benefit from at all.
The Democratic Republic of Congo says it wants to avoid carnage and loss of human life. Officials have called for Goma residents to stay at home and not engage in acts of vandalism.
Given the current security situation in the city of Goma, marked by the presence of the Rwandan army, we first want to reassure the population that following the security meeting we held yesterday with the President of the Republic, he gave us instructions to work as a government to avoid carnage and loss of human life in light of Rwanda's manifest intentions.
The African Union will hold a meeting today over the crisis. Meanwhile, Kenyan President William Ruto, the chair of the East African Community, says the presidents of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Paul Kagame and Felix will attend an emergency summit tomorrow. The conflict in the DRC stems from long-standing regional tensions following Rwanda's 1994 genocide. Both Rwanda and the DRC accuse each other of supporting opposing ethnic militias. The DRC alleges Rwanda support ethnic Tutsi-led M23 rebel group, while Kigali accuses Kinshasa of supporting Hutu militia, the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, or the FDLR. The M23 rebels had previously captured Goma in 2012 before the withdrawal after a regional agreement. However, after years of inactivity, they relaunched rebellion in 2022. Since then, they have captured key cities in the mineral-rich North Kivu province and now capturing the provincial capital, Goma. The DRC accuses Rwanda of using M23 rebels to loot the DRC's minerals. Despite huge mineral wealth, the decades-long conflict in the DRC has devoided it from the benefits, and the country is among the poorest nations in the world. The latest crisis is further likely to worsen the already dire situation. Will African neighbours work to avert a crisis? Now, for more on this, we have with us Professor William Gumede, founder of Democracy Works Foundation and International Affairs Analyst. He is joining us live from Johannesburg. Thank you for being with us, Professor.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Now, what are the underlying factors driving the continued fighting between Rwanda-backed M23 rebels and the DRC army? And how do they reflect the broader geopolitical tensions in the region?
I mean, the sadness about this conflict and many of the African conflicts is there are, either external powers involved or if, neighboring countries involved. I mean, what we now see with DRC, more than 6 million people displaced, is with Sudan one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Now, the first thing is, the M23 rebel group claims that, the 2009 agreement that has not been implemented. That peace accord that they derived the name from, that happened in March 2009, they claim that the Hutus were not. I'm sorry. They claim that Tutsis were not integrated into the DRC army. That's the first thing. The second thing, what they're saying is that they also haven't been included in governance arrangements and so on. But there's some other factors. For example, many of the areas that is now controlled by M23, the UN income from minerals in the areas that they've captured and from production, something to the tune of over $800 million US. So again, it's a typical conflict, African conflict, where rebel groups, when they capture areas, they almost are governments, and they're making so much money that the original purpose, the original political purpose for rebelling is almost set aside because they're making so much money from taking over control of the regions. Almost the same as happening in Libya, for example.
Right. And Professor, the surrender and fleeing of many of the DRC soldiers does raise questions about the morale and the capacity of the Congolese army. What steps can the DRC government take to strengthen its military response and to regain control of the situation?
The UN in its latest report said that Rwanda was supporting the rebels. The Rwandese government has denied that. But clearly on the ground, it's very, very clear that there's, a support, because sadly, again, that Rwanda is also benefiting from the resources in the captured areas, the areas captured by the M23. So they've got that, resource interest also. Now, the African Union has sent peacekeeping force, and South Africa is part of the peacekeeping force. Now, the problem really
Thank you very much to Professor Gumede joining us there on the latest out of Goma region. And now let us turn our attention to the growing anti-West sentiment in West Africa. France is facing new allegations from its former colony, Niger. The junta-led authorities in Niger have accused France of using the old Greek tactics of the Trojan horse to destabilize the country. Now, Niger's Minister for Interior, Public Security and Territorial Administration has allegedly noted that France was partnering with Niger's neighbors to disrupt and undermine the West African country. He said that Niger must be doubly vigilant to contain the situation. The minister further suggested that the military cooperation with France ended up creating desolation in the West African country, and added that the French forces behaved without consequence and had failed to provide security in the country. Now, the military junta chief of Niger now says these latest accusations come at a time when relations between Niger and France have been at their lowest in recent months. Last month, Niger's transitional leader, Abdurrahman Tishani, has accused Paris of aiming to cause instability in the landlocked country and the Sahel region by funding terrorist groups in neighbouring Nigeria and Benin. However, Nigeria denied the accusations of colluding with France to destabilize Niger. Diplomatic ties between France and Niger have nosedived ever since the military took power in Niamey in July of 2023. The coup sparked widespread anti-French protests across Niger. The former French colony followed the lead of its allies, Burkina Faso and Mali, and even broke off defense ties with Paris, forging closer ties with Moscow for military support. The juntas have accused France of meddling in international affairs and have also accused it of failing to put an end to the decade-long militant violence in the Sahel region. Now, this has forced France to withdraw all of its troops from West Africa, including Niger, which has been plagued by jihadist insurgency for years. France also closed its embassy in Niger indefinitely as tensions between the two countries escalated. Reports suggest that Niger has gone as far as embarking on changing the narratives of its colonial relations with France. The West African country has also taken down several colonial names on its streets, monuments, and squares for more patriotic ones. France has been facing similar setbacks in other parts of Africa too. Around 70% of the continent has already kicked Paris out, with its troops present now only in Djibouti and Gabon. In addition to Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso, Chad, Senegal and the Ivory Coast have also joined the France out chorus, while Paris has also faced troubled relations with Algeria over its support for Morocco's claim in the Western Sahara dispute. So, as Niger levels fresh accusations against Paris and Africa turns its back on the West, is France's influence nearing its end in the region? And now shifting our focus to East Africa, where farmers in Kenya are resisting an initiative by the government to vaccinate the country's livestock. Kenya is due to kick off an ambitious initiative this week to vaccinate all livestock in the country, but that initiative is being met by protests and resistance from local farmers, driven by misleading claims about the vaccines, as well as the belief that Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates was funding the project. Last year, the William Ruto government announced plans to vaccinate at least 22 million cattle and 50 million goats and sheep over 3 years. The government explained that the program would help to prevent animal diseases and thus secure the international market for livestock products. Currently, only 10% of the national herd have the necessary vaccinations, and the authorities say they want to raise the rate to 85% to make Kenya's livestock products eligible for export. The government said that it would cost farmers nothing to get their animals vaccinated, as it was footing the bill. Now, however, critics have questioned and opposed the vaccination drive and the effectiveness of the vaccines. Without providing any significant evidence, livestock farmers have expressed concerns that the vaccination program is meant to sabotage their herds. Those who oppose the program believe that the Bill Gates is funding the project in Kenya, and this was fueled by people sharing videos of his interview on social media platforms talking about vaccinating cows to control methane emissions. Now, methane emitted by livestock belching and farting contributes about 15% of global emissions each year. According to the United Nations, it is the most common greenhouse gas after carbon dioxide. Gates has previously invested in projects to reduce methane emissions from cattle and is currently funding a US-based company looking to develop a vaccine. Now, Gates was also at the center of a controversy in Kenya last year after the Kenyan government decided to grant diplomatic immunity to his foundation. But despite the government denying that Gates or any other foreign sources have provided funding to the project, conspiracy theories have been doing the rounds on social media, and the issue has become a subject of political discussion in Kenya. Many people have said that they would resist the jabs for their cattle, adding that no one will be allowed to vaccinate their livestock just because Bill Gates said so, while others have said that there are millions of cows in Europe and America that should be vaccinated first. Opposition leaders in Kenya have also blamed President William Ruto for advancing a sinister foreign agenda and violating the constitution by undertaking this vaccination program. President Ruto, for his part, has dismissed the views of those opposing the vaccinations. He has called it simply misguided, unreasonable, and possibly stupid. Yet experts believe that the spread of such conspiracy theories is down to poor communication by Ruto himself. as well as low trust in his government following the anti-tax protests last year and a series of corruption scandals. When Ruto first announced the vaccination program, details were extremely scant and it was not clear what the animals would be vaccinated against. And this is when reports suggest that there was a clear spike in mentions of both gates and cows by social media accounts with their location listed as Kenya. The furor grew into a matter of national debate, with cartoonists pushing for cattle rights on social media with comical images captioned, "My fart, my choice." Now, this even led the Kenya Veterinary Association calling on the government to halt the vaccination exercise and to conduct a public awareness campaign first. Now, while the government has reassured the farmers that the vaccines are being produced locally, locals have continued to resist the move, citing possible foreign influence, particularly from the American billionaire Bill Gates. And for our last story, we shift our focus to Sierra Leone, a small West African nation that is making headlines for allegedly hiding a wanted drug lord. Now, investigators say that one of Europe's most wanted fugitives, Jos Leidekers, has been living in Sierra Leone for at least the past 6 months. He is a Dutch national and a convicted cocaine smuggler and is one of the main players in the international cocaine trade. Now, he was sentenced in absentia to 24 years in prison in June last year by a court in the Netherlands. A Belgian court also sentenced him to 10 years in prison for drug trafficking offences and assault in September last year. After a long search, Dutch investigators say they have now traced where he had been hiding for months. How? Now, it is because of this video shared by Sierra Leone's First Lady on Facebook. The video is of a church service in the town of Tihun in the southern part of the country. And the video features drug lord Leidekers. Now, he can be seen sitting next to a woman who is reportedly Agnes Bio, the daughter of Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Wani Bio. Now, some reports say that the president's daughter is in fact married to him. However, the relationship has not been confirmed by Dutch prosecutors. The president says that he does not know the kingpin, while there has been no comment from any other member in the presidential family. However, the investigators have confirmed the drug lord has been staying in Sierra Leone for at least 6 months. They say to get him to the Netherlands to serve his sentence is their highest priority. They have ordered a reward of over $200,000 for decisive information that leads to his arrest. Meanwhile, Sierra Leonean government says that the country's police are ready to collaborate with the Dutch government, Interpol and other international law enforcement agencies. It added that the country's president attended numerous family events during the festive season and has no knowledge about the identity and the issues detailed in the reports about the drug lord in question. Now, West Africa is a major transit point for the trafficking of cocaine from Latin America. Around 25 to 30% of global cocaine production travels from Latin America to Europe, typically via West Africa. Sierra Leone is suspected of being a shipment point for the drugs heading to Europe. Just days ago, authorities in neighbouring Guinea seized a vehicle belonging to Sierra Leone's embassy and detained its occupants on suspicion of possessing substances suspected to be cocaine. Sierra Leone recalled its ambassador from the country and clarified that the envoy was not in the car and is not under arrest. Though it tried to downplay the incident then, it is again in the headlines for a drug-related controversy. Only this time it involves a Dutch drug lord and the Sierra Leone president's daughter. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.